The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast, featuring Jeff Upson and Eric Knopsnyder. PA Power Wrestling. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
What's going on, wrestling fans? You are now tuned in to the PA Power Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Upson, joined as always by Eric Knopsnyder. And Eric, we're just now, have you recovered yet? Because I'm just starting to feel somewhat normal again. It's Wednesday, 3 days after the surge.
Yeah, still trying to recover a little bit. Long weekend, but what a great weekend it was.
It didn't start out too good for you, though. I got a call from you, what, was that Thursday, when you went home sick, and you never actually ever go home from work early sick. You weren't feeling so hot. No,
it's still kind of kicking around, still trying to get over this, but sometimes you got to play through the pain, and the surge is our biggest weekend of the year, arguably, so got to do what you got to do to get through it.
Eric, just behind the scenes stuff that goes on for the surge. It was quite incredible, that we were able to pull it off yet again this year. And, I think overall the tournament was a great success. I think all the wrestlers that competed had a good time and a good experience. I think fans had also a good time. High level of wrestling. That was the one thing I heard most from coaches and parents there was that, there was a lot of tight matches. There were a lot of overtime matches. There was a lot of good guys there weren't a lot of pins actually in the first couple rounds, which, we were kind of concerned that it was going to take a little bit longer. But there was a lot of good competitive matches.
Yeah, and that's, like you said, coaches, fans, even officials, everybody I talked to was just wowed by the field that we had and how competitive everything was. As you said, first-round matches are one-point matches a lot of times just because it's such a deep field in a lot of those weight classes.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, there was some things we had to battle through, but we were able to get through, and only in the second year too. We took a lot of notes from last year, and we implemented a lot of things this year, but we still have a lot to go and a lot to learn from. But it's only getting better, and our field increased from almost 188 wrestlers last year who competed to now we had 261 wrestlers that actually took the mats in 2019. So we had some big brackets. Our smallest bracket was four individuals, and that's at heavyweight. So we kind of assumed that was going to be that way. But I was very impressed with the numbers, especially considering it's only the second year that we put on the surge.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is that it's definitely a statewide event. I was so impressed at the number of guys from Eastern PA, whether it's the Lehigh Valley or the Philadelphia area, that are willing to make that trip because they realize how good of a tournament it is and what kind of competition they're going to see there in Johnstown.
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. And like I said, I'm just real happy that we were able to get through it again. And now it's time to kind of collect the pieces. And I finally got to sleep a little bit. I know you were probably feeling it a little bit, just especially because you were under the weather. But it takes a lot out of you, and it was. I'm glad it's over. I said this during the tournament. They said, "How's everything going?" I said, "I'll be fine when everything's over and done." And we hand out the last hammer and we clean up the last piece of trash, and and I'm home in my own bed. But
you still haven't gotten that part yet.
Well, no, I haven't yet because my other job comes in the way, and I'm actually on the road again. So it is a little bit tough. But let's go through, Eric, and let's look at some of the results that were coming in. And let's obviously start at 106 pounds. The top seed here was Nick Allison from Mifflin County, and he was a state qualifier last year, and he was the top seed. He met the second seed in the finals, Jacob Van D. He's from Erie Cathedral Prep. Now, these guys aren't in the same district, but they are in the same region. In fact, they met last year in the regional finals, or I know they met last year. Yes, they did. They met in the regional finals, and they also met in a dual meet with Nick Allison winning the first match 7-6, and then Nick Allison actually beat him 9-0 in the Northwest Regional Finals last year. This time around, though, Jacob Van D gets his first win over Nick Allison. He beats him 5-3 in the finals, and they kicked off the finals in solid fashion because I thought that was a good match. They were very competitive.
Yeah, that was a very good match, and I think Van D is probably growing into the weight a little bit more. He was really a baby-faced kid last year. Looked kind of small, and I think he's really kind of growing into it and maybe ready to establish himself as a really solid 106 this year.
Now, Eric, you were able to the talk of the tournament early on was Devin Jackson of West Perry, and I know you were able to speak with him and possibly his family. Can you tell us a little bit about Devin Jackson, who he stormed into the semifinals from an unseeded position?
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to do it just because, as we said, we're still kind of recovering, still kind of a crazy week. But I have all the materials. I want to write a story on Devin Jackson, as you said, from West Perry. He's just a great story. Devin, and like I said, there'll be a much more in-depth story about him a little later. But the kind of the Cliff Notes version of it is Devin, when he was, I believe, 8 years old, he contracted bacterial meningitis. And one of the effects of it was they ended up having to amputate both of his legs below the knee. And so he dealt with that for about 2 years. And then on coming back, somebody suggested to him, hey, maybe you should take up wrestling. That's something you could probably still do pretty well, even with the condition that he's in. And he's worked so hard at it, put in so much time and kind of adapted his own style and really figured out how to do things that'll work for him. Because obviously a lot of things that your everyday wrestler can do, Devin can't do because he just doesn't have the physical capability of doing it. But he's so strong in his upper body, hand strength, all that. He finds ways to beat guys, and did that, as you said, made it to the semifinals. Unfortunately, lost a couple straight there, ended up taking sixth. But just a really inspirational story. I talked to him. I talked to his mom. Just so impressed with the family and with Devin and the outlook. I mean, he was devastated to take sixth. He wasn't happy to take sixth. He was really crushed that he only took sixth when I talked to him. But, you love to see that attitude that he's not settling. He could be saying, hey, I've got all these problems that I've had to battle through. I should just be happy to be able to place at a tournament like this. But no, he's got the attitude, I'm coming here to win this thing. And, anything less than that, I'm going to fall a little short, and I'm going to keep working.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with the way he wrestled, his tenacity. The top half of the bracket got a little blown up. The fourth seed, Chad Ozias from Connellsville, he lost in the first round to a freshman, a very tough freshman nonetheless, Kel Nasdio from Williamsport. He lost to him 9-4. Devin Jackson gets him in his first match, and he beats him 9-1. And then he beats Jacob Haupt, the fifth seed from Cannon Mac. He beats him 1-0. I saw that match. That was a good match. And then he fell to Nick Allison. Now, the other story here is Steven Spitko from Daniel Boone. If you remember that name, he was the wrestler from Daniel Boone who his freshman year contracted leukemia. And this was a big story out in the District 3 area. Undersized freshman at 106 pounds, Steven was, and he contracted leukemia. In fact, I remember Spencer Lee tweeted something out about him, and it was definitely a very tough battle for him. He came out to the Surge and he competed as the third seed. He actually did finish in third place. He lost to Troy Homan from Penn Trafford in the quarterfinals, but then bounced back to take third place. So another very inspirational story there. He's a junior now this year, and I'm excited to see, how do you come back from that? It's like Jason Baker from Derry. We talked about him several years ago, and he came back from radiation and chemotherapy, and I mean, that's just incredible.
Yeah, these guys might be the smallest guys out there, but man, talk about heart. Two guys like that, as you said, Steven Spitko coming back from leukemia, Devin Jackson finding a way to make it work on two amputated legs. Just, the great inspirational stories and kids you really want to root for and see them do well.
Yeah, and those two actually wrestled in the consolation semifinals, with Spitko winning that match 4-3, a tight match there. So you had Devin Jackson and Spitko going at it, two very inspirational wrestlers. Jacob Haupt from Canon-Mac did finish in 4th place, and Troy Homan, the son of Larry Homan, whose face and name is up on the Hall of Fame room of Pitt Johnstown, he took 5th, with Devin Jackson finishing in 6th place. So very, very deep weight class. Like I said, Chad Ozias from Young Guns, from Connellsville, he did not finish on the podium. So that just shows how deep that bracket was. A lot of young freshmen here that I wanted to get my eyes on, and they did not disappoint. I was impressed with Cale Nasdio, and I was also impressed with the son of the head coach of Bucknell. He was able to come through and get a couple big wins at 106 pounds, but he was definitely had a little bit of a tougher draw where he had Spitko in the first round. That's Cade Wernzenberger from he's actually from the Bucknell area where Bucknell University is, but he's going to Meadowbrook Christian, I believe, is starting a wrestling program in high school, and I believe I believe that's the name of the school. But he had a tough match with Spitko, but then did knock off Chad Ozias and beat Tyler Chappell and Hunter Swedish. So he was almost a match away, ultimate tiebreaker away from finishing top 6th.
So if you are starting a program, pretty good guy to have there to kind of build your program around. I don't know what else they have, but that sounds like a really talented young guy to have on your roster if you're getting started.
Yeah, Meadowbrook is, I believe it's a Catholic school or Christian school in the Milton area, and I know they're starting. I think this is the first year that they are actually doing a wrestling program. I believe they had a co-op with Milton earlier. But like I said, his dad's the head coach of Bucknell, so that's pretty cool that he was able to be there and compete. And he did impress. He had a couple. He had rattled off those 3 straight wins in the Concy round, which was impressive.
All right, moving on to 113. I know this is a guy that a lot of people in Pennsylvania wanted to see, Mason Gibson, who was the talk of the Super 32 after winning it at 106 as an 8th grader a couple weeks back. And Mason certainly did not disappoint here, even going up to 113.
Yeah, he's like a superstar, man. Like everyone, when he got on the mat, everyone was watching that mat. Even just his first early rounds, I can remember just seeing him. I think he was on mat number 1, the UPJ mat, and literally I looked over and everybody was watching that match. Even though he beat Cody Miller from Hickory 20-4 in 3 minutes. Everyone was watching him. There was just, and I think he was wrestling, it was either Trevor Donaldson or Connor Brown, and one of them threw a headlock. It might have been Connor Brown. One of them threw a headlock on him, and the crowd just kind of, you heard that ooh from the crowd, which was pretty cool because everyone was watching Mason Gibson. He's so, he's shorter, and Connor Brown was probably like 5'10", and Mason Gibson's no bigger than like 5'2", and he's just such a fire, man. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch in high school. It's a shame we have to wait another year to see him in high school.
And you mentioned, he's a personality too. Mason, I've known him for a few years now. Don't know him that well, but I've interviewed him a few times. He's local here to my area, and he's just a fun kid. Like he seems like he has a lot of fun. He's always got a smile on his face, and he enjoys what he's doing. He's working hard. He's doing the right things, but he's having a really good time doing it.
He walked around the tournament the entire time with the Super 32 singlet around his neck, like as a cape. Like, did you see that? Like, literally,
I did, yeah.
The whole time, the whole day, he just had his Super 32 singlet on around his neck like a cape. And at one point, he wanted to wear it on the medal stand, and I believe it was his mother or father. Someone said, like, Mason, take that thing off. Come on, like just for a second. He was like, "Do I have to?"
I don't want that. It probably sounds like it's really cocky that he thinks he's Superman and he's walking around with a cape. But I think that's just Mason having fun. You mentioned the family. Like I remember last year, Eric Gibson, his older brother, won a hammer last year, and the first thing that the mom was saying was like, "Hey, no beating your brother was with this." Like that's just kind of the attitude of the family. Is they're just a really fun-loving bunch. Like I said, they work hard, unbelievable athletes, do great things, but they have a lot of fun doing it too.
Yeah, I definitely love both those guys, and Eric. I mean, I definitely love the way Eric wrestles, and just him off the mat. He's a really good kid. Like, I mean, he's a lot of fun to be around. They're both very low key, and they just have fun. They just have fun. They remind me of those Penn State guys that just are happy go lucky type folks there, and they. But when it comes down to business, they bring it, right? Mason Gibson came in with 3 tech falls as the top seed here at the Surge. And then in the finals, he had a very unique opponent here, Andrew Christie, and he's a freshman. He was competing for Team Nauman. He's from New Oxford area, the same high school where Jordan Conway came from. Andrew Christie blew up this bracket. He beat the 3rd seed Ethan Bergnick from Hempfield. He beat him 3-2. He was a state qualifier last year. He beat him 3-2 in the first round, then took off the 6th seed from Hamburg, Parker Davison, beat him 7-0. And then in the semifinals, he had another freshman from Central Dauphin High School, Matt Repos, who beat number 7, Caden Walter, in the first round 9-0, and then upset a returning state medalist from Easton, Braxton Fries Appello. He beat him 2-1. So now you had 2 District 3 freshmen going at it in the semifinals for a chance to take on the super 8th grader, Mason Gibson. Christie ends up winning that match 2-1, and he keeps Mason Gibson to a regular decision. He loses 8-1 to Mason Gibson, but Christie's a guy who, I'm not going to lie, he was not really on my radar in terms of one of the top 20, top 30 freshmen. He was a PJW state qualifier last year. He didn't come away with a medal, but he really, this is kind of like a Jared Kessler moment from last year when Jared Kessler came in the Surge and knocked off a ton of people. Christie's kind of that guy this year for me that really came in and turned heads.
And that's one of the things that we love about this, being able to have this tournament is to get to see some of those guys early, like an Andrew Christie, who really comes out and impresses you here and can kind of, that our tagline's been prove it. And a guy like Christie can do that. Say, hey, you might not have been looking at me as the top incoming freshman, but, I'm on the radar now and here I am, I've shown what I can do.
Yeah, I was very impressed with him. He finished ahead of a few state qualifiers from last year. As I said, Ethan Bergnick from Hempfield, Gavin Richard, and Connor Brown from Littlestown. These guys were all state qualifiers last year, and he finished ahead of all of them. Connor Brown from Littlestown did come back to take 3rd. He beat Matt Repos from Central Dauphin 1-0. And shout out to Central Dauphin, man. I was. Obviously it's where I went to school. It's where I wrestled and grew up in. And, I try not to play favorites at all with them, but I was impressed with the way they wrestled. We'll talk a little bit later about Ty Weathersby up at 152 pounds. And, Central Dauphin showed up. I was impressed with Matt Repos. As I mentioned, he finishes in 4th place. He beats Gavin Richard from Daniel Boone, who last year was a state qualifier. So it goes Connor Brown, Matt Repos, and then John Brenneman from Northern Garrett in Maryland. He finishes in 5th place. He beats Gavin Richard 9-1 in that 6th place bout. So I was surprised there because 13 was not a very deep bracket. It was actually one of the smaller brackets, which is shocking to me because 113 is normally, you would normally get a lot of guys there to compete, especially in a preseason. But there was only, I think, 14 guys in this weight class as opposed to 33 in 120 and 126.
Yeah, that was a little surprising to me as well. We've obviously had the discussion about how little guys, are so important to the sport and how the elimination of the lower weights is really bad for the sport. I don't put too much into this. I think it was just kind of a weird coincidence this time that we didn't see a lot because the 106 bracket was still a pretty good size bracket, and 120 was as well. So just for whatever reason, 113 wasn't huge here. But and the other thing, I look at this, and it's kind of a double-edged sword. We all love to see the upsets and see the bracket get blown up and all that. But then when you're running the tournament, you're like, man, did we do something wrong that we had these seeds that didn't do anything? But
right.
it's still fun to kind of see those guys come out of nowhere and really blow up a bracket.
I'll say I'm pretty satisfied with my seeds here, Eric. We had I think it was 8. Dyson and I went through it, and I think it was 8 number 1 versus number 2s in the final. So that's pretty good. There was a lot of 3 and 4s that finished in the top 4. So there were, but obviously you like to see, like you said, those surprise ones that come through and surprise you, I guess you would say. So there was no surprise at 120 pounds. The first and the second seeds both made it to the finals. That's Jackson Arrington from Young Guns competing for Forest Hills High School. 120 and 126 were the deepest brackets of the Surge. There's no question about it. Jackson Arrington, returning state medalist. He was a Surge place. Or I'm sorry, state champ. Yeah, did I say medalist? A Surge medalist. He was a Surge medalist.
He was a state medalist, just happened to be the top one.
The top of the right. What I meant to say, Eric, was he was a Surge medalist. He didn't even win the Surge last year, but he went on to win a state title. Right. So Jackson Arrington finally does get a Surge hammer, and he had to do it in kind of tough fashion. He opened up with 2 tech falls, one over Lucas Sheets and then the other one over Carter Stanley. But then he had a tough match against Dylan Coy from North Allegheny. Last year he was impressed us as a freshman. He beat him 2-0 in sudden victory. So Dylan Coy takes Jackson Arrington to sudden victory, and then he faces off with Jude Swisher of M2 Training Center, who's now at Bellefonte High School. He was a state qualifier last year for State College. Arrington only beat him 1-0. So definitely a tough road to the finals for Arrington.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a state bracket right there. I mean, Dylan Coy and Jude Swisher, those are 2 guys that we're definitely expecting to see in Hershey this year, I think.
Yeah, and Swisher was the 5th seed. He knocks off the 4th seed, Noah Frack, who was a Pennsylvania State medalist last year at 106 pounds for Brandywine Heights. He was 7th in the state. He beats Noah Frack 10-6 in the quarterfinals, which was a great bout. I was actually able to see that one before Swisher fell to Arrington. On the bottom half, though, and I'd say an even deeper side of the bracket, because you had Dayton Delvischio from Malvern Prep. He was actually a national prep runner-up last year, so this is a guy who was in the national prep finals. He makes it to the semifinals. He beats Cooper Gilham from Baldigo area. He pins him in the quarterfinals, and then he gets a date with Ryan Michaels from Elizabeth Ford. And man, Ryan Michaels was a guy that we all penned. I think you and I both said going into the postseason, we thought he was going to win a state title at 113 pounds. In fact, he won the Southwest region, actually beating Jackson Arrington in the regional finals 6-1. But this time around, Jackson Arrington beats Ryan Michaels 4-1 in the finals to claim the Surge hammer.
Well, and we talked to Jackson afterwards. Dyson Gould and I did some interviews with him, and he said that they know each other so well. It's really hard to wrestle each other. They practice together at Young Guns, so they're really familiar with one another. So it kind of had that feel of that really tight, tough for either guy to get a whole lot going. I think Arrington got a takedown in the first period, and I think he added one late, if I recall. So even though it was 4-1, I don't think it really felt that like a 3-point match for most of it.
Yeah, it was pretty tight, and they had a few good scrambles. And as you mentioned, both camps from these guys said, like, oh my gosh, like, do we have to wrestle again? Like they're always competing in the room. Like I said, they competed last year in the regional finals. But it was nice to see the sportsmanship between these two. Jude Swisher actually came back to take 3rd, so he can do more than just podcasts, because as you know, he has a podcast that he does, and he's known for that. But he can do more than that. Apparently, he can wrestle too. He finishes in 3rd place. He beats Delvischio from Malvern Prep in the 3rd place match. He beats him 3-1. Delvischio takes 4th, and Noah Frack took 5th place. He beats Chase McLaughlin in the 6th or 5th place bout. He beats him 1-0. Dylan Coy loses to Noah Frack in the blood round, and Cooper Gilhan from Bulgaria, state qualifier last year, loses to McLaughlin. So a super, super deep weight class here at 120 pounds. I mean, there was a lot of state medalists or state qualifiers that did not even sniff the top six. So very impressed with this bracket.
Yeah, this is one of the fun ones to watch. And, this is what we kind of expected to see this year, and I think we're going to see a lot more of in the future, that you've got these brackets where, as you said, state qualifiers aren't even getting to the medal rounds because it's just so deep and there's so much good competition there.
You move up to 126 pounds, and once again, there was a number 1 versus number 2 in the finals, but this time it was the number 2 seed, Rocco Welsh from Waynesburg, the freshman who comes away with the title. It was his second time in the Surge finals. Last year, he advanced into the finals against Alejandro Herrera Rondon, and he lost to him as an 8th grader. This year, as a freshman, he comes into the finals against Matt Sarbo from Altoona area. He actually is a state medalist. He was a state medalist 2 years ago as a junior this year. And these two did wrestle in the Super 32 qualifier with Welsh winning that one. And I know you said something like, hey, why would you seed them differently? But, a junior state medalist versus a freshman who is highly touted. But Welsh proves that he should have been the top seed. He comes away with a 3-1 win in the finals. It was a tough match, man. Those two went at it. Rocco Welsh is going to be a force to reckon with, man. I really like the way he wrestles. You can tell he's gonna adjust nicely to high school competition.
He does not look like a freshman.
No, he doesn't.
And in terms of size, build, style, technique, everything. I mean, he's just so impressive. And yeah, we knew last year whenever he came to the Surge that he was going to be a stud. But he certainly looks ready for the limelight right now as a freshman.
Another guy that I was excited to see was Jacob Blair from Muncie. If you remember him, Jacob Blair was he finished 8th in the state at 106 pounds. This was 3 years ago as a freshman. His sophomore year, he was the top-ranked wrestler in the state coming into the state tournament, but missed weight. He failed to make weight, so he was eliminated. And then he had some type of injuries last year, so he has not been on the mat for quite a while. He's 77-10 in his career for Muncie. He's now a senior, and he came away with a third-place finish. He lost in the quarterfinals to Garrett Thompson from Franklin Regional. He lost to him in sudden victory, but then bounces back to take third place, beating David Evans, who himself came in as a 2-time state qualifier from Tunkhannock. So another very, very deep weight class here. You had multiple state qualifiers that did not get to the medal round. Josh Miller from Central Dauphin had a couple big matches. He lost to Nathan Lucier, but then he comes back and beats Seth Donovan, loses to David Evans. So Garrett Thompson ends up taking 5th. David Kreidler from Allentown Central Catholic, who is a state medalist, he was able to finish in 6th place after falling to Rocco Welsh in the semifinal. So again, just a super, super deep weight class here. There was a lot of guys here that are going to be on the podium and at the state tournament in Hershey that did not make it to the top 6.
Yeah, as you said, very deep here. Some really great stuff there in the early rounds and in the Consi rounds as well, with just so many good guys in that bracket. A guy like Logan Jacque from Eisenhower, kind of gets lost in the shuffle there. But, I mean, he's a really good guy and didn't even place there.
Yeah, so kind of the same thing last year. We had a lot of guys that did well at the Surge but did not win it or place that ended up doing really well in the postseason. So I'm expecting the same thing here this year. You move up to 132 pounds, and our first 2-time Surge champion came with Alejandro Herrera Rondon. AHR came through after winning a title last year. He's bumping up all the way to 132 pounds, though, and he looks big, Eric. He's got a lot taller.
Yeah,
would you agree?
I can't remember. I think he said he grew 3 inches in the off season.
Oh, it looked like 5 inches to me.
It may have been. It may have been what he said, but I mean, he's definitely a lot taller. 132 certainly does not look too big for him.
So he had a nice little run here. He got two tech falls and a fall going into the finals. So no real issues there. In fact, he beat Dalton Gimber from Hamburg, who himself is a pretty solid wrestler. He was a state medalist last year. Ali beat him 14-0 to get to the finals, where he wrestled Anthony Glassell from Brockway, and he was able to beat him in the finals. It was a tight match. It was 6-4. It was definitely a little bit tighter than he probably wanted. Anthony Glassell's a two-time state medalist, though, 107 and 20 in his career at Brockway. He's a senior, so definitely not a guy who's not accustomed to winning. And he kept it close with Ali, especially considering how Ali was just destroying everybody else. Another very, very deep weight class. 20, 26, and 32 were probably three of my favorite weight classes. You had a couple upsets in the early rounds. Ty Simmerman from Derry area, he beat Colton Stone King from Waynesburg 3-1, but then fell to Riley Bauer from Williamsport. He lost to him 3-0, and then defaulted in the Consi round. So it was a very deep weight class. Dalton Gimber ends up finishing in third place. He beats Carter Gill from Hickory in the third and fourth place match. Very, very deep weight class here.
Yeah, and kind of interesting to me because, yeah, like you said, you have Simmerman there who ended up defaulting out. I don't know. Did you see, was he banged up or did you happen to see what happened to him there?
I did not, but I would assume he was banged up and couldn't go, because I talked to him the day earlier, and he was pretty pumped up to compete, and I'm sure it was probably something where he tweaked something and he wasn't able to go, because I'm pretty sure he would have wanted to continue competing. Yeah,
but as we said, some really good weights there. As you said, you got Gimber, you got Bryce Volman from Muncie, who's a pretty good guy. So some really good guys there, and then a guy like Riley Bauer coming through to take sixth there. Weinberg. So yeah, definitely some good talent here at this weight.
There was a lot of fun matches in the consolation round for this one. Colton Stone King and Kyle Vernon went to ultimate tiebreaker, with Stone King winning that by fall. And then Stone King beat Bryce Volman from Muncie 4-2 in sudden victory. And then Carter Gill beat Stone King 3-2 in a very tight bout. Like I said, there was just so many good matches here all throughout that it was tough to catch them all. It was definitely hard to keep track of everyone, but a lot of fun here. Moving up to 138 pounds, we had a very, very intriguing matchup here in the finals between number 1 Kenny Kaiser of Sagertown versus number 2 Jared Kessler of Connellsville, Eric. Kenny Kaiser came in. He was a runner-up at the Surge last year. He lost to Eric Gibson in the finals. He was a runner-up at the state tournament. He lost to Jacob Ely from Hopewell, who was a Surge champion last year. So Kenny Kaiser comes in as the top seed against Jared Kessler, who was a Surge champion last year, but he's up a few weight classes. So this was a huge match. I was very, very excited to see these two go at it. Kenny Kaiser does come away with a 3-0 win in a very, very entertaining bout.
I love watching Kenny Kaiser wrestle. He's just a guy that goes out there and lets it fly. Like he's not holding anything back. He's going to go out and attack, and he's going to score some points. Only got 3 here, but that was enough.
Yeah, it was enough to beat Jared Kessler, who himself had some really good wins coming into the finals. He beat John Attiri from Norwin. He beat him 5-2, and then beat Chase Chapman from Phillipsburg, Osceola. He beat him 11-4. Chapman was a state qualifier for PO last year. So Kessler, I know, wanted that second hammer for sure. You could tell he was a little disappointed after falling to Kaiser, wanting to repeat as a Surge champion. Mason Spears from Franklin Regional had a really good tournament. He beat Hunter Mays, and then he beat Matt Williams from Ohio, who was a state medalist for Ohio. And then he falls to Kenny Kaiser 4-2, but he bounces back to take third, beating Matt Williams again. Matt Williams was from CVCA out in Ohio. So 2 very good wins for him. Chase Chapman defaults in the 6th place bout. John O'Teary takes 5th. I was very impressed with some of these guys. I was very impressed with the way that Kessler and Kaiser Kaiser put on the finals. As you mentioned, Kaiser he lets it fly, and that's something that I think you're going to see a lot from him this year. I was surprised to see him down at 138 so soon, but he looked good. He looked good at the weight.
Yeah, I talked to him afterwards, and I told him, to me, seeing him and Eric Gibson last year in the state semis was the pace they set in those first minute and a half, that just no human could keep that up for 6 minutes. So I like I said, I love watching him. He seems like a good kid. That was the first time I've really gotten to talk to him. Really impressed watching him. And as you said, I mean, you look at those semis, you got Kaiser and Mason Spears and Chase Chapman and Kessler. I mean, that's a really solid semi. And you had that Matt Williams there who didn't make it to the semis. Spears beat him there. The really solid kid out of Ohio. So another really good. I don't know if it had the depth of some of the lower weights, but definitely some high-end talent there.
Yeah, it definitely had some firepower in it. I mean, Eddie Heen was he's a two-time state qualifier.
Eddie Heen. We got the correct pronunciation.
Sorry, Eddie Heen. Yeah, I forgot.
I've been saying it wrong for years, so.
Yeah, so have I. It's going to be hard to break that habit. Eddie Heen, who once again, he came in overweight last year. He came in a couple tenths over this year as well. He had a tough tournament here as a two-time state qualifier. He lost to Zach Lewis of Quakertown in the Concy round, and then Lewis ended up losing to Matt Williams 3-2. Just like I said, you just had a lot of high-end talent here, a lot of depth at 138 pounds. It wasn't much different up at 145 pounds. This was probably the match I was looking forward to the most. That was Panero Johnson versus Matt Lackman in finals. This was a number 1 versus number 3 seed. And Matt Lackman's a guy who everyone forgets is a 2-time Ironman medalist. It's sometimes harder to medal at Ironman than it is the state tournament. Ironman is one of the toughest, if not the toughest, in-season tournament in the nation. And Lackman has done really well there. Well, I was excited to see him. He's been banged up. He's been unhealthy. He's never made it to the state tournament as an individual. He's been there for the team for backup, but he's never made it there as an individual. And he had a tough road. I mean, he was on the same side of bracket as Tristan Pugh, Drew Vlasnik, JT Hogan. But then you look at the top half, you had Panero Johnson, a 2-time state medalist, a Fargo All-American, a guy who's ranked top 10 in the nation. Lackman comes in to the finals as the 3rd seed and beats the top seed, Panero Johnson, 4-0. Probably one of the best bouts of the finals for sure.
Yeah, Panero, I know I heard a comment during the before the finals that Panero was maybe the most impressive guy there in the whole tournament that somebody had seen, that they thought that, he looked that good during the day. But as you said, Lackman is a guy who probably doesn't get enough respect and went out there and shut down Panero's offense in the final.
Yeah, I mean, he really did, and he was able to get to his offense. The one takedown that he had was just nasty. And you can go back and watch the finals on the Westmoreland Sports Network. You can PAPowerWrestling.com, and you look at the Surge recap and finals replay. There's a link in there. You can watch. Anyone can watch it. It's free for anybody to go in and watch. But you got to watch the finals between Matt Lackman and Panero Johnson, because he hits Panero is very, very quick, and he gets down in like a one-knee position, and he fakes a shot, but then he comes back up off his knee, and as he does that, Lackman comes in with just a head-up double, just straight on blast double leg, and takes him right out of bounds, right for the takedown. It was a beautiful takedown. Lackman looked good. I thought I was very impressed with him. I was excited. I thought we were going to see Tristan Pugh from Berlin, a state medalist who's going to Appalachian State. I thought we were going to see him, but Ethan Wyant from Red Bank Valley, himself a state qualifier, was able to defeat Tristan Pugh in the quarterfinals 4-0, and then Lackman beat Wyant 5-0 before beating Panero Johnson. Again, very deep weight class here at 145 pounds. A guy who I was kind of anticipating to do well, but I wasn't sure, and that's Sam Hayes from Council Rock North. This is a guy who's been banged up, kind of like Lackman. He doesn't have a very good career record. I think he came in with a career record of something like 30 and 20 or something like that. It wasn't that good of a career record. In fact, he was 48 and 27 as a senior for Council Rock North. He beats the fourth seed Dominic DeFalco from Quakertown, another District 1 guy. He beats him 10-3 in the first round, but then he loses to Jackson Gray from Mount Lebanon, who was the fifth seed. They actually met again in third place match, and Sam Hayes beats him 9-2. So very impressive for a guy who doesn't even have 50 career wins, and he's finishing third ahead of some pretty tough guys. Because Jackson Gray beat Tristan Pugh. That was a huge win for Jackson Gray to beat Tristan Pugh in the Conti semis.
Yeah, and as you said with Hayes, I mean, he's unseeded coming in and ends up taking third in a bracket like this. That's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the names here that did not place, and that's Drew Vlasnik from Seneca Valley. He's a guy who I was pretty high on. Jared Bear from New Oxford, another guy who I've been impressed with throughout his career. Freddie Junko from North Allegheny. He had a tough match against JT Hogan from Daniel Boone. So again, you look at how this sets people up for the season. You know, a guy like Jackson Gray, a guy like Sam Hayes, they're gonna have a little bit more respect, I think, coming into the first match of the season, because they've beaten guys. I mean, you don't come away with beating a state medalist and state qualifiers and not have some sense of confidence after doing that. That's what I love about the Surge, is guys like Sam Hayes, guys like Matt Lackman come in, you know, and they do prove it, right? I mean, that's our tagline is prove it. These guys did prove it, and I was very impressed with them.
And I think that's one of the things that sometimes we forget about, is just that mental side of it. Of these guys may be really good, but you know, there are still doubts that creep into people's heads. And whenever you can go out there and beat that state qualifier, that state medalist, and really show, hey, I belong here, not just to prove it to us, but sometimes to prove it to themselves as well.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the biggest things, you know, when I was talking about some of the coaches here, is, you know, the one goal and the one thing in my mind that I really wanted to see for the Surge was to have those middle tier guys get their hands on some top quality guys. I like having, you know, Alejandro Herrera here. I like having Panero Johnson here. Because they are vulnerable. Anyone can be beaten on any day. You know, they put their singlets on the same way you and I do. Those guys are beatable.
I don't think we're putting singlets on anymore, Jeff.
No, I mean, I'm not. I'm not. The only thing I'll be doing is like Mason Gibson. I may like wrap one around my neck and use it as a cape. I'm certainly not gonna put one on. But regardless, you know, these guys, it's nice for guys to get their hands on somebody. And, you know, we always talk about, you know, feel them out. You know, I want to actually feel them. I want to feel what it's like to wrestle this guy. These guys get to put their paws on some top quality guys, and they realize, holy crap, I can hang with these guys. Like, you know, they're state qualifiers. Yeah, they're state medalists, but I'm right there with them, you know, and it gives them that sense of confidence. And, hey, maybe I'm not as far away as where I wanted to be that I thought, you know. So that's kind of why I like it. I really like having the mix of all different, you know, accolades, if you will, because, you know, once you get your hands on somebody and you expose them, you now all of a sudden, okay, I get that sense that, yeah, I can do this.
Well, and the flip side of that is sometimes guys come in with a little bit of a big head, thinking, oh, well, you know, I did this last year, so I can kind of coast into the season. And you come here and you take a loss or two that you didn't expect, and that kind of resets everything and say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe I placed last year, but that doesn't guarantee me anything this year. I've got to get back in the room, get back in the weight room, keep working, and continue to move forward to get to where I want to be.
Yeah, we'll talk about that situation up at 160 pounds here in a second, but let's move on to 152 pounds. And one person who did not kind of let it get to them and let the things happen was Eric Gibson from Forest Hills. Obviously, the older brother of Mason Gibson. Eric Gibson, he kind of was welcomed into high school by winning the Surge last year, as you mentioned. He beat Kenny Kaiser in the finals. Eric Gibson is a guy who just was had an incredible freshman year. Yeah, he did lose to Kenny Kaiser. He finished third in the state behind Jacob Ely and Kenny Kaiser, two guys that placed at the Surge last year. So this guy loves competing. I love to watch him compete. he was able to come out with some pretty big wins. His closest match may have been in the semifinals against Nolan Lear from Benton, who was the 4th seed. So in this case, the 4th seed, Nolan Lear, comes away with a 5-3 decision loss to Eric Gibson. But it was definitely a closer bout than I expected. And he was able to keep it close with Eric, despite only being both being sophomores. So very impressed with the way Nolan Lear wrestled. He did come back to take 5th place. This was a funky weight class, man. 52 was a weird weight class. If you would have told me that Ty Weathersby from Central Dauphin, who obviously I may be a little impartial towards, but if you were going to tell me that Ty Weathersby was going to be in the finals, I would have been very surprised, because you had Dalton Harkins from Malvern Prep, who was down on this side, and you had Tanner O'Haley from Cannon Mac, who was down on this side, and Jackson Spires. Ty Weathersby from Central Dauphin's a guy who almost didn't even make it out of the first round. He takes on Guy DeLeonardis from Knock. He beats him 9-7 in sudden victory, but then he goes into ultimate tiebreaker against Tanner O'Haley from Cannon Mac, who himself last year was a state qualifier. And then to top it off, he beat Jackson Spires 9-4 to advance in the finals. Spires from General McLean knocked off Dalton Harkins 5-0 in the quarterfinals. Now, Dalton Harkins is a guy who is super tough. He's a 3-time national prep medalist. He's 141-31 in his career. Jackson Spires, on the flip side of that, he's 15-6 in his career as a junior. Okay, that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the surge, and I'm talking about guys that are making a name for themselves. Jackson Spire comes in with a 15-6 record as a junior, a state qualifier, but he beats Dalton Harkins, who has 141 wins in his career, beats him 5-0. And then Ty Weathersby from Central Dauphin beats him 9-4. Now, Gibson did have not a lot of issues at all with Weathersby beating him 9-1 in the finals. And on the flip side of that, Dalton Harkins comes back for 3rd place with a tech fall over Guy DeLeonardis from Knock in the 3rd place match. So super crazy things. DeLeonardis beats Jackson Spires 5-3 in sudden victory. Nolan Lear loses to Dalton Harkins 5-1. He takes 5th, beating Jackson Spires in 6th place. Again, crazy things happen at 152 pounds.
Yeah, that was a bizarre bottom half of the bracket and then Conti bracket. Just all kinds of weird stuff going on there.
Yeah, Nick Nettleton was impressive for me. This is a guy from Exeter who's a sophomore. Last year he was a regional qualifier, 27-15. He beat Jake Switzer from Southern Garrett, but then he loses to Nolan Lear 1-0. So a very, very nice battle there with Nolan Lear, and then he comes down, he beats Aiden Kaufman, and then he loses to Leonardis from Knock. But again, just some interesting results here. Sammy Starr, I thought, wrestled well. He kept it pretty close with Dalton Harkins. He lost 2-0 to him. He's a guy who, like some folks from Kiski, I mean, he just, he's trying to find a spot in that lineup. There's a lot of guys there. Bunched around 160 to 170 pounds here. So a lot of depth here, especially for a weight such as 152. I think there was more guys here at 152 than there was 113, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
And for any of those who are wondering, Gavin Beck from Franklin Regional, the freshman who was taken out of the surge on a stretcher, he is recovering. He did suffer a concussion in that match against Dalton Harkins, but he is recovering, and I'm told that he will be okay.
And that's one of those things there where, scary situation with Gavin. Glad to hear that, there's nothing too serious there, hopefully. But I also like the fact that they said, hey, they could have taken that win. Harkins could have lost that match because it was called a slam. And they could have taken the injury default victory. But instead they said, hey, you know what? Let him go on. It wasn't anything intentional. There was nothing that he did to try to hurt Beck or anything like that. So they said, we'll default the match and let Harkins move on. Yeah,
I mean, and hats off to them for doing that. And like I said, it was nothing malicious. It was just, it was what it was, right? And I'm happy to hear that Gavin is doing better. Let's go up to 160 pounds, where your top seed was Jack Bloomer from Kiski. He was a third place state medalist last year. He's going to West Virginia. So again, I'm a little impartial. I graduated from WVU, but Jack Bloomer, man, he waited to the exact last second to sign up for the surge. I was messaging him on Instagram like, dude, are you going to sign up or not? He won a hammer here last year. Last year he won a hammer at the surge. Was very impressive. I think he's got the senioritis a little bit. He's committed to college. I don't think he really wanted to compete in the surge. I just think he kind of did, because he was like, hey, I gotta defend this hammer. And I think it may have caught him a little bit, because before the finals, he kind of had his hands in his pockets. It wasn't really warming up. And he ended up losing in the finals to the third seed, Jack Waymeyer from Malvern Prep, who himself is a national prep medalist. He beat Bloomer 2-1 in ultimate tiebreaker. There was a call where I'm surprised they didn't call stalling, because Jack Waymeyer had Bloomer up in the he was on top, and I thought they were going to call 5 seconds. He did not return him to the mat, but they did not call that, and he ended up winning in ultimate tiebreaker. Again, I don't know if it's a case of just like kind of coasting, but Bloomer, I hope, has a little bit more tenacity when he competes in the season.
And you give credit to Waymeyer. I mean, he put together a pretty solid tournament. What? Tell me a little bit about him. You know the prep guys a lot better than I do. What do we need to know about Jack Waymeyer?
Well, he's one of many young studs from Malvern Prep. I mean, he's only a sophomore. Last year, as a freshman, I didn't even know if he was going to be able to get in the lineup, but he did. And he had himself a good state tournament, national prep state tournament, and then went on to get into the I believe he was 7th at national preps, and that was down at 138 pounds. I could be wrong there, but he definitely put on some weight. And
they must have one heck of a weight room at Malvern Prep. Because we're going to get to Nick Feldman a little bit later, but those guys can lift some weights. I think
a physical specimen. The Nick Feldman is. I can't agree with you anymore. I don't. And we got to remember these guys are coming in. Pretty young, right? I mean, like I said, he's only a sophomore. I don't know about you, but I definitely jumped a few weight classes between freshman and my sophomore year. Maybe you didn't. I don't.
No, I was a 3 and 12 pounder my whole career. So
yeah, you had you never really hit your growth spurt, right? You just
there was no growth spurt in the Knopsnyder family.
I'm kind of sorry to hear that.
Don't forget, I'm the tallest one in the family.
You're taller than Larry?
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't know that. I kind of just assumed he was taller. Jack Waymeyer actually was 132 pounds last year. I take that back, not 138. He was 132 pounds. He was a state finalist. He lost to Bo Bartlett. I don't know if you've ever heard of him before, but he lost to him.
That sounds familiar.
He lost to him 18-5 in the finals at 132 pounds. But did go on to place at the National Prep Tournament. So you went from 132 pounds last March to now 160 pounds in November, and he beats a senior who's going to WVU and is a state medalist at 160 pounds. I'm pretty impressed with that. And like you said, they must have a weight gym at the Malvern Prep facilities, because like you said, Nick Feldman is a freak of nature, man. That guy is huge. But Waymeyer had a nice tournament. He beats Wyatt Griffin, pins him. He beats Trenton Tidball from Meadville. He beats him, pins him as well. And then he beats Ethan Rickner from Bellefonte, who is a state medalist from Bellefonte. He beats him 4-0 before taking out Bloomer in the final. So definitely not a fluke here. He earned it. And I was super excited to have those Malvern Prep guys, because like you said, I mean, you don't really see him that whole lot. I see him at Ironman. I'll see him at Escape the Rock, but a lot of guys don't get to see the Malvern Prep guys, and these are all Pennsylvania guys. These are all Pennsylvania natives. These guys are all ones that came up through the PJW ranks. So it's really cool to see them come out and compete in the surge. I had to talk to Nate Lauder, and I just said, man, I'm super excited you guys were able to come out here, because it just makes it that much deeper.
And that's what's really cool about it too, is because, yeah, you get a few tournaments throughout the year, like you said, with Escape the Rock maybe, but there aren't a whole lot of places where you'll see AA, AAA, and prep school kids in the same tournament. So it's nice to be able to see kind of that mix and how guys can do against somebody in a different level.
Yeah, it's you have AA, AAA, and you have national prep guys, and then you have out-of-state guys. So, for example, at 160, Hunter Wilhelm from Northern Garrett was a Maryland State medalist. He's a senior. He was the fourth seed, but he loses to Eli Brinsky from South Fayette. Eli Brinsky beat him 6-0, and then Bloomer beats Brinsky. But Brinsky comes back to take third. I thought he had a great tournament. He beats Trent Tidball 6-0, and then beats Ethan Rickner from Bellefonte, a state medalist. He beats him 4-0. And shout out to his mom. She
exactly.
She straight up saved the tournament. We were freaking out because Paul Myers, who runs our Flow Arena and just does a phenomenal job for us, even though despite the fact that he does state rankings for Flow now, Paul, we love him, and his computer was frozen. It was like, and this was right before the brackets were about to go live on Flow Arena, and we're freaking out. We're like, what are we gonna do here? Because at that time we didn't really we were just trying to get the brackets up and out. And she comes out of the stands and she's like, hey, I think I know what to do. Tanya Brinsky comes down and just straight up saves the tournament. She does something to it. I wasn't there, but she was able to save the day. So
she go Mr. Miyagi on it or what?
I don't know. She works in IT. She used to work in IT, and she was like, I think I know what to do here, and she fixed it. I mean, I was very happy to hear that, and I told her, I was like, you need to get a free shirt. You want a shirt? And she kept on saying no. So I'm gonna have to mail one to her for doing that for us. But Eli Brinsky himself had a phenomenal tournament. He beat Wilhelms 6-0, and then beat the state medalist Rickner 4-0. So despite losing to Bloomer, he did finish third in a good weight class. Tidball does come back to take fifth. So again, you look at some of the guys who weren't able to get on the medal stand. Ryan White from Forest Hills had a good tournament, beat Ben Halbert from Palisades. Another shout out to Palisades. They brought their squad out. They brought 6 guys, I think. Colby Keene came all the way up from Florida. I did not know that Colby Keene moved to Florida. He's a Bradford guy. His brother competed in the Surge last year. The Keenes, I feel like there's been 9 Keens that competed for Bradford. Kyle Keene was around when I was wrestling.
Right, yeah. I was talking to the dad and kind of going through all this. Yeah, Kyle was there, and I guess Dylan now goes to UPJ, right? Is that the way it works out?
Yeah, right. He goes to UPJ, but what was the move to Florida? What's that about?
I don't know how that came about. They just said that they moved to Florida a few months ago. And so, Dylan was at UPJ, and they thought, hey, what a great way to come up here, visit with the brother, and get a little wrestling in under his belt at the same time.
Yeah, so the dad, Brian Keene, wrestled, I believe, he wrestled at Bradford, graduated in 1989. Then you had Kyle Keene, who I graduated, he graduated a year before me, but I remember because he was in my weight class. I believe he was a 2-time or 3-time state qualifier. And then you had Dylan Keene, or maybe Tim Keene was in there too. Tim Keene, Dylan Keene, and then Colby Keene from Bradford. So when I saw him sign up, I just naturally, why would you not assume that he was not at Bradford? But then I find out he's down at Lakewood Ranch in Florida. So shout out to Colby for coming up, but he had a tough tournament. He had a tough draw here, losing in the first round to Ben Halbert 3-2, and then falling to I'm not even going to try to say that name, Eric, because
Cochiasvili.
Cochiasvili. Say that 9 times.
I heard he's from Georgia.
He is the not the state, the nation of Georgia.
Right,
yeah.
right.
He's a really good Greco wrestler, and he looks like he's 48 years old too.
He may be. I'm just kidding. Don't be offended, Gregory.
But seriously, I mean, how old is he? He beat Stephen Roeder from Bloomsburg in the first round 4-3. Then he wrestled Jack Bloomer. He's a really, I know he does a lot of freestyle and Greco. and you can tell like that's his style. He beat Colby Keene 7-5 and then lost to Rickner. He took 6. He defaulted to 6th place. So
yeah, I know they said they wanted to get out of there. That was just a situation where they had a long drive home, and
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're coming from Philly. You're coming from
right.
legit Philly. That's but. To be honest, Eric, I was very surprised at how many of the 6th place matches were actually competed.
Yeah, most of them were. I mean, there were a couple kids banged up that decided not to, but
for the most part, I think we had like 8 or 9. That actually went and competed. Which I mean, that's why we did the 6th place was, we didn't have awards for them, but why would you not want another match? I don't know, like. I guess I'm just of the school of thought of, you want to get as many matches as you can to get that mat time. It's good practice. And again, it's good feels for you to get your hands on somebody. And I get it. You're banged up. You got a long drive. It's a Sunday night. You got school in the morning. So I totally get it. But if you're able and capable of doing it, why would you not want to?
Yeah. And speaking of long drives, Angel Garcia at 170, our champ.
Angel Garcia is a stud, man. Fargo national champion in Greco-Roman. He's just a complete stud. Rob Waltko of our college podcast says he thinks this guy has potential to be an All-American in college. He's going to Ryder. He came out with a fall in the first round, beat Dakota Rogers from Connellsville 5-0. Got a pin over Dustin McDonald of Maryland, and then he beat it was the longest 170-pound final ever. There was so much blood time in this match, but he beat Coy Bastian from Selinsgrove, 2-time state qualifier. He beat him in the finals 3-1. Angel Garcia I really like him a lot. He's a state medalist. He's going to Ryder. He's from District 12 in Philly. He wrestles with the beat the streets a lot. The kid can just compete. I like watching him.
Yeah, and he was a good kid to talk to as well. Got to talk to him a little bit in the post-match interview, and seemed like a pretty good kid. Good to see him doing well here. That was the first time I've really gotten to see him too much. Just the way it works out, not one that I kind of see too much. So it was good to catch up with him and see him beat a pretty good guy in Bastion. As you said, I see him a decent amount with Selinsgrove. So that's an impressive win to me.
So there's a few things I want to talk about with 170. Number one, they finished their seeds 1, 2, 3, 4, all finished 1, 2, 3, 4. Angel Garcia, Coy Bastian, Isaiah Reinhardt, and Dustin McDonald all finished 1 through 4. But the story here was Tucker Hogan from Daniel Boone. This guy's an 8th grader competing at 170 pounds. He's on Dyson Gold's junior high big board. He was unseeded coming in here at 170 pounds. He knocks off Isaiah Reinhardt from Easton, who himself was a state qualifier last year. He beats him 8-7 in the first round, and I was like, "You're kidding, right? That's an 8th grader beating a state qualifier who's a junior
at 170." And
at 170,
yeah,
right?
That's the big thing to me. Is that, taking nothing away from Mason Gibson and the incredible things he's done, but we see this sometimes at the lightweights where a younger guy can go out and beat an older guy. You don't see it nearly as often at the heavier weights.
I mean, imagine him, what he's going to be like as a 9th grader. It's almost like Thomas Haynes. When I remember Thomas Haynes from Solenko when he was younger, just beating guys ridiculously older than him at heavy weights. So Tucker Hogan follows that up with a 5-3 win over Casper Hinckley from Connellsville, but then he falls to Coy Bastian. He comes back into the Conci rounds, and he gets to the Conci semifinals. He gets a rematch with Reinhardt. Reinhardt comes out and beats him by major decision 12-2. So I don't know if it was a case of, it's an 8th grader, I'm not going to have a problem with him. And, he may have, had kind of like a rude awakening, but Reinhardt comes out and he beats him pretty good. Then Reinhardt comes out and pins Dustin McDonald in 38 seconds in the 3rd place match. So he was probably a little ticked off that he lost to an 8th grader. I know he wanted to win a hammer here and get a shot at Angel Garcia, but I'm glad to see him battle back, for third place. McDonald takes fourth. Tucker Hogan comes back and does take fifth place. He does beat Brant Mason from Hamburg in the fifth place bout 3-2. So again, love to see these guys competing all the way through here.
Yeah, and like you said, you've got Hogan there, so some different things to kind of look at between Garcia, a guy who, certainly for me, I don't see that much, down to a guy like Tucker Hogan, who's an eighth grader. You've got Reinert coming back from that loss to bounce back for third. So a lot of kind of noteworthy things happening in this bracket.
Yeah, I mean, Reinert comes back after losing to an eighth grader. He beats freshman Matt Furman from Canon-Mac 6-1. Then he beats Lance Urbis from State College 4-2 in sudden victory. That's a tough match for him against Urbis, who's the younger brother of Cole Urbis. Then he beats Dakota Rogers 7-0 before getting that rematch with Tucker Hogan. So he went back to Easton with 5 straight wins, going 5-1, 6 matches on the day against some good competition. So I definitely think that trip was worth it for him, and I hope to have him back here next year. 182 pounds. Again, not as we get into the higher weights here, which, by the way, 70 was it had 17 wrestlers in it, 170 pounds. 182 wasn't that far behind. 8 wrestlers were competing at 182 pounds. The top seed, Ryan Weinzen from Norwin, was your champion, and he beat the number 2 seed, Jake Marnell from Hazleton, in the finals 5-1. A little chippy here,
Yeah,
between these
you
two.
can say that.
There were some accusations of choking, and parents were involved, and I went from tournament organizer to security / police officer real quick, and I was like, this is not what I'm here for.
It's rare that you need a security guard at the podium.
Yeah, but we did, and obviously, tensions are high. You're competing at a high level, and both these guys are, we're very apologetic afterwards and said, look, I don't mean to kind of, bring this to you, but Ryan Weinzen he's a state qualifier. He's down from 220 down to 182, which was just,
and he looks really good here.
Yeah, I think this is a great weight for him. I think it fits his style. It reminds me of Luke Montgomery from Bethel Park, who grew into 195. I think Ryan's going to find success here this year at 182 pounds. Jake Marnell's a senior, no stranger to success, a 2-time regional qualifier, very close to making it to the state tournament. And he beat a pretty tough James Laird from General McLean in the semifinals, 5-2. And the guy here who I was kind of surprised to see do well was Campbell Walls from Hollidaysburg, and that's kind of because he jumped up several weight classes. He was actually registered at 160. I don't know what he ate, but he ended up going all the way up to 182. And Paul Myers, who used to coach at Hollidaysburg, did you see his hair too, by the way?
Yes, I did.
It's ridiculous.
How could you not see his hair?
He looked like Carrot Top. I mean, he has a mane of orange hair just flowing from him. I mean, like when he took his headgear off, I was just like, how did all of that fit in there? It was quite, kind of, I don't know, it was kind of scary. But Campbell Wallace he did have a good tournament.
It came from the 10th seed to take third.
Well, there was a reason he was a 10th seed. Paul was like, forget it. We're just going to throw you in. You jumped up 2 weight classes. You're gonna have to earn it. He
was
beats
going
Austin
for the
Winter.
Ryan Anderson Award.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, I'm going to go up a few weight classes and give it a try. He beats Austin Winters from Palisades 4-3, loses to Jake Marnell 11-5, gets a forfeit over Luke Duthie in the Consi semifinals, and then beats James Laird 3-2 in the consolation final. So good win for him. But yeah, Ryan Weinzen and Jake Marnell probably aren't going to be sending each other Christmas cards this year.
No, not at all.
And at least I didn't have to go cop mode. That's always the worst. When I leave one job and try to put on a different hat, and then you get sucked back into it. So I was happy to see it kind of de-escalate itself. But let's talk about 195, Eric, where there is talk about somebody who can de-escalate a situation. I'd love to have him in uniform with me. Nick Feldman is just a freaking animal. The national prep medalist and Fargo national champion. Nick Feldman, man, he came in at 195 pounds. He waited around for a while to get his first match, but once he got it rolling, he was pretty unstoppable. He got a tech fall in the first round, but then he actually had a decent match with Josh Harkless from Wilson Westlawn, who I was impressed with. He got a 5-4 win over Noah Tustin from Waynesburg in the first round. Harkless did a match that he actually dropped again against Noah Tustin in the third place match. But Feldman beats Harkless 13-7, then beats Jake Lucas from Cumberland Valley in the finals. Lucas is a really, really solid, consistent wrestler from District 3 who is in his junior year. He's made it to states last year, but has not come away with a medal. Feldman beats him 7-2, but he was vicious in the finals.
Yeah, he was so impressive for only being a sophomore, so big and strong and physical, and just really has the look of a guy with bright things ahead of him.
So what weight do you think Feldman wrestled last year? So I told you Waymeyer wrestled 132 pounds. Feldman is now at 195 pounds. What weight do you think Feldman wrestled last year?
I asked him because you told me 52, and he said no, 60 last year.
It was 60. It was 60. I may have said 52, but it was 60 because I know that because he wrestled Aurelius Dunbar from Mercersburg Academy, who is going to Penn State now, and he lost to him in the semifinals of the state national prep tournament, and before going on to finish as a national prep All-American. However, you jump up to 195 pounds, and he looks like a different human being. Just very, very strong.
He's huge. I did ask him a little bit. Obviously, only a sophomore. But I said, being at 95 already, does he expect to grow into a heavyweight, by the time he gets to college? And he said, yeah, that his dad was a heavyweight in college, and he expects to get to that level to kind of bulk up even more and in preparation for becoming a heavyweight eventually.
Yeah, I saw his dad last year at the Escape the Rock tournament, and I was like, oh, I can see the apple doesn't fall far from the tree because his dad's a beast. So, not surprising to hear him say that.
So he's the apple and his dad is the tree at that point when he was a 60-pounder?
Certainly, I would say so. He sprouted into a nice big tree himself now, too, though, so... we'll see what it's like in a couple years. Lucas takes second. Noah Tustin comes back for third. Waynesburg, he's also a sophomore. Noah Tustin is. He beat Josh Harkless in the third place match. Harkless takes fourth. And another match that I was happy to see that they competed was in the sixth place match at 195 pounds. Carl DiGiorgio from Central Bucks West, who had a nice drive back to the eastern part of the state. He stuck around after beating the third seed Seth Hunsinger from Hazleton. He beat him 9-8. He comes back to take fifth, beating Riley Robel from Bishop McDevitt, who I believe played in a football playoff game the night before. If I do remember correctly, I think he played in Bishop McDevitt's football game on Saturday and came out competed on Sunday.
That's
he lost to Jake.
Awesome.
Yeah, he lost to Jake Lucas 4-1 in the first round, but he did take sixth place. So shout out to him, Bishop McDevitt, for him coming out there. 220, Eric, your boy Dorian Crosby from Cathedral Prep, man. He 220 was probably one of the best finals, and not a lot of people saw it because at 220, by that time, people were like, I gotta go. I gotta drive out, drive home. Not that it was late in the day, but it was definitely, it was the last finals match competed. Dorian Crosby does come away with a 6-4 victory over John Myers from Greensburg-Salem. Both these guys were at the Super 32. They both lost to the same wrestler. Dorian Crosby's a 2-time state medalist. He's going to Bucknell. I really like him. I'm a big fan of the way he wrestles. He ends up winning that match 6-4 over John Myers, who himself was a state qualifier last year. So good match. I don't know if you're able to see that one, Eric.
I did not get to see much of it, unfortunately, between bouncing back and forth between interviews and things like that. But Dorian is he's a fun kid too. He gives me grief all the time because I tweeted last year during the when he won the regional. And I don't know if I called him Darian or Cosby or what it was, but there was a slip up in the tweet, and he gives me grief about it every time he sees me now. So it was especially funny when I saw that you tweeted that he was the 195-pound champion.
Well, I put it in the interviews because I put all the champions interviews together, and I'm doing it late at night, and I'm half asleep, and he was a 195 or 195 a few years ago, and
I think was he 195 last year and went up to 220 mid-season, didn't he?
Yeah, correct. He was 195, and then he ended up going up to 220 because he wrestled Hunter Katka, and he upset returning state champ Hunter Katka at the state tournament. That was a huge win for him. But yeah, I put in his interview title 195-pound champion, and he tweeted, he's like, thought I would won the 220-pound bracket. I'm like, look, man,
so, Dorian is tough on us, man. He does not cut us any break.
Well, we're if you're calling him Cosby and Darian, I mean, I would be too.
One of them. I don't know which one it was, but I know there was a typo in there.
Looking at 220 pounds, Garrett Boone, who was the 4th seed, takes 3rd. He beats the 3rd seed Eddie Farrell from Fox Chapel in the 3rd place match 3-0. And Bryant Most from Myersdale, he takes 5th place, beating Dalton Gable from Forest Hills to finish it out in 6th place. So they actually finished as they were seeded. The only switch was Eddie Farrell and Garrett Boone from 3 and 4. So I was happy to see 6 guys at 220 because last year, if you remember, Eric, we had no one at. Was it no one at 195? 195,
yeah. I thought we had one guy at 95. I think it was Hunter Tremaine, and we got him to bump up, something like that.
No, that was Bryson Miller. We had Bryson Miller.
Bryson Miller, you're right.
And we bumped him up. But super excited to have at least 6 guys there at 220, 8 guys at 195. At heavyweight, we did only have 4 guys, which you're going to have to. That's kind of expected a little bit with the way things are with football and everything. And Jalen Stevens wins his 2nd straight Surge championship in a round robin format. So he beat in the first round. He beat the 2nd seed Stone Joseph 4-0. His toughest match though came in round 2 against Dale Mohring from McKeesport. He beat him 2-1 in ultimate tiebreaker. Mohring is a guy who, as a freshman last year, he did not compete in high school, but he competed in PJWs where he was a state champion at heavyweight in PJWs. This kid's going to be, I was very impressed with him and the way he wrestled. I got to talk to him a little bit after the tournament. I think this kid's going to be the real deal. I definitely think he's going to be competing for a spot on the podium in Hershey, only as a sophomore. He takes 2nd. Stone Joseph finishes in 3rd, and Jacob Kunzelman from Ridgeway takes 4th. So, again, happy to see 4 guys here compete at heavyweight.
Yeah, I know we got a tweet. Somebody saying, how can you only get 4 guys there? And my response was football season.
Who said that? Someone tweeted us that?
Yeah, someone tweeted and said, how can a statewide tournament only get 4 guys at heavyweight? And I didn't get into it anymore then, but I looked it up. And
you're lucky I didn't see that. I would have said something real stupid back to him.
Super 32, which is the biggest tournament in the nation, had 20 heavyweights in it. Drawing from across the country, it had 20. So 4 for the Surge, I don't think is bad. Would we like to have 20? Absolutely. But the simple fact of the matter is most guys that are heavyweights are playing football and either aren't done with their season yet or are done and aren't in wrestling shape yet and don't want to come after getting banged up for 10 weeks in a row. The first week after that, they don't want to come and grind out a wrestling tournament. So, 4 guys that are pretty solid quality guys, I'll take that.
Yeah, that's a stupid comment. I like I said, I would have said something snarky back to that. Like, are you really that stupid that you don't understand why there's only 4 people in a heavyweight bracket in a preseason tournament in Pennsylvania? Okay, but whatever. I'm very happy with the 4 guys, and they all competed very well. I'm excited to see how DJ Moering does compete this year for McKeesport. I hope to see him do well. So those were our 14 champions. Those were our medalists, Eric. I have to say the Surge, the second annual Surge was a success. I was very happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, we were we get nervous about it. We're fretting, in August and September and all that. But I mean, it really came together to be a great tournament. Thankfully everything went smoothly again. As you said, Paul Myers does a phenomenal job of running the things from a lot of different angles and helping us out. So great job from him. All the volunteers were fantastic. Heard nothing but positive comments, which, frankly, we ask people to, hey, let us know, what can we do better? And there aren't a whole lot of criticisms that we get. So, I'm thrilled with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I am as well. And if there is anything that you noticed, or other than 4 people in a heavyweight bracket, if that's your concern, don't even bother messaging me. But yeah, absolutely. I think, we're not going anywhere. We're sticking around here. We want to continue to grow this tournament. We want to continue getting more folks competing here. I mean, I was stoked to see guys from Ohio, Maryland competing here, West Virginia, even like I said, Keene from Florida. I was super excited to have those guys there competing because they get a taste of Pennsylvania wrestling too. So,
and the hope is that they go back and they tell their friends about it, their buddies, their teammates, their guys that they go to club practices with. They're saying, hey, we went to this tournament in Pennsylvania called the Surge. And so next year that the 1 or 2 guys from Ohio turns into 8 or 10. And, it just keeps growing because where we are, I mean, frankly, Johnstown isn't that far from a lot of West Virginia or Maryland or even Ohio. A lot of those places are a lot closer than the Philly guys that drove out 4 hours.
I would say most of them are, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the Hillbilly Hammers Club that came up from Maryland. I mean, that's probably less than an hour and a half. That's probably as close as Pittsburgh or closer.
Yeah, Eric, I mean, I'm certainly happy that the Surge is over. I feel like I can rest a little bit. My sleep score and my sleep number bed is definitely going up a little bit. I'm away from like the 30s and 40% scores that I was getting before because I can actually sleep without worrying about little things. Maybe like our like ankle bands. Remember that, Eric? Yeah, I'm going to make sure.
As the national anthem is starting, we realize we have no ankle bands, and luckily did a quick scrounge through the UPJ facility there and managed to find some ankle bands to get.
And no one even knew about it.
No, I know. We got started on time. No one knew.
No one knew.
That was one of the rare times when I wasn't standing still for the national anthem. I kept creeping up on tables and dropping ankle bands as it was being sung.
Yeah, well, I was upstairs as the national anthem being sung. I'm upstairs on a computer with my dad looking up what time Dick's opens and if they have ankle bands or not, which they didn't. You have to special order those, which we're going to buy our own for next year just to have. So the little things of running, the joys of running a wrestling tournament. But it really got me excited, got me kind of a jolt of excitement for the season because, before the Surge, it was always focused on the Surge, but now I'm really excited to get to preseason rankings here, previewing some of the top teams, which will all be coming your way pretty soon here. So it just got me excited for the season, Eric. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm ready to get going, as you said, on the rankings. This gives us a good jumping off point to see where guys are as far as weight and just, kind of start easing back into that and getting things ready for the season.
Well, Eric, I know we got some work to do ahead of us, so we'll stop it there. But there's a lot more to come from PA Power Wrestling. The 2019-2020 season for PA Power Wrestling is going to be a big one for us here. I know we got a lot in store and a lot planned to bring to you, the fans. We're going to talk on our next podcast about Rockfin and what that means for you. We may be even getting the greatest mind in wrestling on the show. I don't know. We may be fortunate to have Willie Saylor jump on the show with us if he's able to find some time in his busy schedule, which is basically being the best wrestling mind in wrestling.
Yeah, he's on the Rockfin team now. Excited to have him on board, and as you said, maybe we can catch up with him at some point and get him to explain a little bit what his new venture is.
I mean, we're essentially coworkers now, so I don't understand why he wouldn't want to jump on with us, but we'll talk to him soon and see if we can get him on to talk a little bit about Rockfin and about the rankings that we're doing. So, but in the meantime, you can watch back the Surge finals on the Westmoreland Sports Network. You can go to papowerwrestling.com and click on the link there and watch the finals. If you haven't seen them, you got to go back and watch them. You got to look out for our college podcasts with Rob Waltco, Tristan Warner, and Mason Beckman. I know they had a interview with Jordan Wood from Lehigh. I know they're doing a podcast right now with Brock Zakharov from Clarion. They're doing a lot of good coverage here of all the Pennsylvania schools and all the Pennsylvania wrestlers. Dyson Gould, who's my prodigy, he's definitely going to be taking over PA Power Wrestling when I'm tired of this. He was at the Surge the whole weekend for us. He was even there on his birthday helping set up. So shout out Dyson Gould, man. The kid's a warrior when it comes to wrestling, both on and off the mat. But he has a preview of the Iowa Wrestle Off. So anything with the Hawkeyes, he's there for. So definitely get a check out for that and keep updated for that.
Quick note there. It's funny how guys become celebrities. I can't remember who it was. One of the guys we were interviewing after the finals, one of the champions, I said, "Hey, this is Dyson. He's going to be, doing the interview along with me." He's like, "Oh, are you Dyson?" He's like, "Hey, happy birthday, man!" So these guys that don't even know who he is necessarily, to see him, they see the tweets and they see the social media, and now they're beginning to know who Dyson is. So kind of cool to see that.
That was so cool because, I mean, we found out, I guess, the day before. He told us before that it was his birthday, but obviously it didn't stick with me. But the day before, we knew it was his birthday. So when my wife was going out to Walmart to get some things, and you were like, "Hey, we should get him something," so we got him balloons and some cupcakes, which may have been more for us, but he definitely enjoyed them, and It was just so cool. Dyson's, like I said, he's my main man. He's awesome.
He and Dominic Deputy was there. Couldn't be there quite as much as Dyson, but both of those guys super passionate about the sport, young guys, and it's so much fun to see their passion for it and their love for it, and just want to be a part of PA Power and just get the word out there about wrestling.
Dude, and Dom, I'm pretty sure, could run 5 mats on Flow Arena at the same time. Like, he is, like, for how young he is, he was super good at running a mat table there. So, if we could find a way to get 5 tables all at the same location, I think he could run them all. So, but yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff coming on papowerwrestling.com. Make sure you check out all the other podcasts. And until next time, wrestling fans, keep it classy.